At a certain point, she became resentful. And I just realized I can't control her. I can't change her, no matter how nice I try to be to her or, whatever we go through. And all I can do is please God. The desire for balance doesn't exist. It's seasonal. I haven't met anyone that has struck the balance thing right. I'm a big guy for the mornings because I believe it creates momentum for your day. I could walk into a meeting at 8 o'clock and, I've already ran a 5K that morning or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think that could be the danger, though, of discipline sometimes.
Sure.
Is that you get to a point where you think you don't need people to teach you.
Yeah.
You don't need people to help you. I got this. I got it figured out. And I think that's where people miss it.
Yeah.
They think they know enough. Man, finally, I got you on a podcast. I feel like I've been chasing you down.
Stop.
I feel like I've been chasing you down to get on a podcast with me. So for all of you watching, this is my friend Isaac Roman. How long have we been friends? How long have we've known each other for a long time.
So we've known each other since 2004.
Okay, so I was 14.
Yeah.
So we knew of each other.
Yeah, and then probably once you were a late teen.
Yeah.
17, 18, 19. When did you and Jess start dating? How old were you?
Gosh, we started dating I was 17.
Okay, so probably that's when I would say that we really built a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 17. So you do the math for me.
Hold on,
I can't do
I'm
it.
34. 15 years, something like that. A little older than that. I don't know.
I think that's
34 is a weird age to count back from. You know what I mean? The math doesn't add up to me. It's not easy math at all. Well, I think one thing that I love about our friendship is that we've always been very honest and real with each other.
Sure.
There's always been that open door, and it wasn't always like that. I think it took a lot of time to develop. But I would say that you're one of my closest friends. I don't talk to a lot of people. We're busy. We got our family, got our kids. But I do make it a point to reach out to you and have our conversations. And it's funny because I'll call you for a 5-minute thing and then we end up talking for the next hour or so about different ideas. And I've just really valued that. I remember this one time. So do you remember that me and Jess, we confessed our sins to you and we talked to you guys about it? I remember one time when you pulled me and Jess into the kitchen right here, actually, at the church. And you're like, hey, we need to talk to you guys. I was so scared because this is before we confessed, and I thought you caught us, and so I thought you were pulling us into tell us hey, you guys are in a lot of trouble or whatever, and you were telling us about Mikey.
Yeah,
Lizzie was pregnant with Mikey.
Yeah, wow, so that's 11 years ago,
dude.
Right?
That is crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. 11 years ago.
Yeah, Mike's 11. He'll be 12.
Wait a minute. I've been married for 12 years. Maybe it wasn't that. I don't know. I feel like I was scarred by my past that I'm always afraid I'm going to get in trouble by something. But so how long, you and Lizzie have a great marriage. How long have you guys been married?
We're married in 2005. And we just celebrated 19 years in November. Next year will be our 20 year.
Oh my, what are you guys going to do?
I told her, let's do something awesome. We talked about, there's this wolf experience, an Airbnb. It's called the Wolf's Lodge, not the Great Wolf Lodge.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't go to the Wolf Lodge.
It's a Wolf's Lodge in Canada. And it's an Airbnb out in the wilderness, and you stay there and you live by a pack of wolves. So we're going to do something like that.
That sounds scary.
Just something different. Yeah.
So you're going on 20 years, but it wasn't always easy.
No, of course not.
And I don't think I've heard the stories, but I don't think I didn't get to obviously we knew you guys when you were going through some things.
Yeah.
But now you're married 20 years. What does that look? What were the first couple of years like for you guys? Because I love to sit down with what seems like a successful marriage story, which I believe it is.
Yeah.
And I think people watching and seeing the longevity of friendships, the longevity of marriage, and thinking why don't I have that?
Yeah.
But you got to put in work. And so what were those beginning years like for you and Lizzie?
Yeah. So I think, Liz was 19. I was 22. I had a 7-year-old daughter, 7-year-old daughter. Alyssa was 6 or 7 years old. And so 19 years old, Liz and I, we knew of each other, but we dated for a short period of time. I fell in love with her. She's beautiful. And things moved really fast for us. And so when we got married, I'm sure, she had her expectations, I had my expectations. And as every married couple realizes, those expectations don't line up. And so the first couple of years, I think the first year, we were still just getting to know each other, right? And I think that that first year, it wasn't. That's not really where a lot of the problems manifested themselves. The first year, it was just exciting. It was new, that kind of stuff. And I think what happened over the next couple of years was the melding together of a blended family. So Liz was pregnant with Madison as well, and so she carried Madison. She's now caring for this 6-7-year-old young girl, and then
so
the baby comes.
For context, you got married, but you already had Alyssa.
Correct.
And so Alyssa was 6 years old when you got married to Lizzie.
Right.
Lizzie was already pregnant when you got married?
Yes.
Or okay. And so now you're talking about, now you're deling with all of these.
Yeah.
These
So
things,
it's kind of
differences.
So it's kind of a mess, to be very honest. It's kind of a mess. And, in retrospect, we talk about this. Liz was 19 years old. What were you doing when you were 19? A lot of people, 19 years old is a very, very
Still
young.
learning a lot.
You're right. So, overnight she becomes a wife. She becomes a stepmom, and she's carrying a baby. Madison comes in February of the following year, in 2006, and there was all kinds of complications with that as well. She had complete placenta previa. She was in ICU. Madison was in the NICU for several weeks after she was born. So there's all of this stuff, right? And I still believe that even in all of that, it was still new, it was still fresh, and things were good. It was a few years after, maybe year 4 or 5, right, where reality really starts to settle in. Like, this is our lives. And Liz has always been loving, empathetic, and nurturing, and all of those things. But I think at a certain point, and you'd have to ask her.
Well, if she would jump on the podcast and stop avoiding me, Liz.
But there's nothing wrong with me sharing this. At a certain point, she became resentful.
Wow.
Why do I get to have a marriage and a home and a wife that stays at home and all this stuff, when I made choices prior to her, obviously, but I made choices that put her in a position where she's now this mom, the stepmom, navigating the relationships and this this blended family.
Wow. All
this stuff, and she was just 19-year-old young lady, right? And so I think just mentally for her, things started kind of rearing up in her, and then also just me as I'm also a pretty young man.
You were how old? I
was 22.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, so
you just got married at the same.
Yeah. So consider a few things here, right? So I got really saved, right, in 2003. So 2003 in October, I come into Praise Chapel Paramount at the Madison building, and I'm strung out on meth. I'm a drug addict. I'm alcoholic. I'm a loser. I just have nothing going for me. God saves me miraculously, and changes my life. I get a job. I have community. I have relationships, and God starts working something in me. In that time, Liz and we meet. She gets pregnant. We get married, and so there's all of that stuff. So even for me, I had to mature as a man. I had never paid bills before. There's just all this stuff, and so the biggest issue that we had, and I think this could help people, is that in my mind, I was fulfilling my responsibility. What I thought that responsibility was being a provider, and I would say things like this when we're fighting. I'm a provider. I go to work. I come home. I care for my family. This is what I do.
Right.
I don't do all these other things. I'm not out, running around, all that kind of stuff. And what I failed in is understanding really my responsibility to be a protector. So it's not just being a provider, but it's also being a protector. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to realize that there's a deep connection that our wives desire and need from us, that we have to be empathetic to. And I'm just kind of a knucklehead. I think all of us are knuckleheads.
Yes.
And so her and I were able to connect, and I was able to be, get this great revelation of this is actually what it means to be.
And where did that come from? How did that happen?
Well, so I think a lot of it had to do with getting over myself and my pride, and then additionally being surrounded by community, right? So having friends, having pastors, having different people, so people that helped us, right?
Yeah.
And along our way. I mean, obviously, your dad, your mom and dad were a voice that that my wife respected and loved, and they helped us through stuff. Pastor Omar, obviously, I remember one time that we were going through things, and Pastor Omar is just always tell me like, hey, your family is the most important thing. He would say things like, I'll crawl through broken glass across the entire United States for my family. That's how much I love them. Nothing will keep me from my family. So his encouragement of, hey, just, if you messed up, you got to eat it. You got to own it, right? And don't allow yourself to respond in a way that's not honoring to God, right? So they helped us a lot, and really it was just not to leave. I wanted to leave. She wanted to leave, right? And everyone said, you can't leave. I think about her, her closest friend was Vanessa Briseño, right? And I'm sure, I don't know, they don't share with me, but I'm sure, Liz would reach out to Vanessa, or Vanessa would reach out to Liz and say, hey, what's going on here? And give her, redirect her and say, hey, you can't.
So we got to that point where she was like, I'm done with this.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And how did you feel the same way, or were you just like, no, I'm in it, but
yeah? So I tell people when I'm counseling, because what's interesting is what I experience is not unique to me. All of us go through a version of it, and so I tell people all the time that I went through the complete cycle. Okay, so there's a lot of manipulation that we try to use on our wives that is just wrong. Right. Okay, that manipulation is you're going to meet their same passion or energy or fire and try to dominate, right? So you're yelling, well, I'll yell louder, right? You're throwing things, well, I'll just assert my dominance, right?
Break things instead.
Yeah, and especially for my wife, that doesn't work because things just escalate, right? And so then I try to take it all the way back and like, okay, well, I'll just be super passive and just let you have your moment, or just do what you want, or give you the cold shoulder, like just this whole cycle, right? And Liz says it much better than I do, but people ask like, okay, so what broke for you guys? And truly, it was the work of the Holy Spirit. There was a season in my life where I realized I'm not leaving. I love this woman. Nothing's going to separate me from her. She'll have to leave me, right? I love my family. I got a real conviction around my leadership and my modeling for all of my children that are in my house, and showing them how to love your wife, right? Truly how to love it biblically. And so I made a decision, and we were at each other's throats all the time, and she's like, I don't want to go to church, and all this stuff. And I just realized I can't control her, I can't change her, no matter how nice I try to be to her, or whatever we go through. And all I could do is please God.
Wow.
Like that's all I could do. So if I could please God, if I could honor God, and show my children what we do and how we do that, and then also honor my wife and love her like Christ loved the church, right? Regardless, there's no strings attached, unconditionally. And I just remember that. I said, okay, I'm not going to get sucked into your bitterness or your resentment or your anger. I'm not going to allow myself to get sucked into that. I'm going to continue to serve God. I'm going to continue to go to church. I'm going to take the kids to church. If you don't want to come to church, I would love for you to come to church. You don't want to come to church, okay? Well, we're going to go. I'll be back when we're back. We'll pick up where we left off, whatever that was. And I just remember one Sunday morning, we're in the kitchen. We're in Bellflower on I can't remember the street, but
is that Jeremy's old spot too?
No, it was the other. It was the other like little townhouse that we were in.
Okay.
Big kitchen, kind of island kitchen, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I'm there and I'm getting ready to leave, and she just comes in and she's just staring at me and she's just weeping. And then we had a moment of reconciliation. And I think that was really the turning. Right now, it's not like happily ever after, right? But that was a turning point where I think even my wife, she was working through things internally, right? Anger and all that kind of stuff. Now, Pastor Omar always says, it takes work to make it work, right? In our marriages. And so we've done other things too, so we've sought professional counseling and things like that to help us. She carries a lot of she carried a lot of hurt and a lot of pain from her childhood.
Yeah.
I had a lot of hurt and pain from my childhood, and we never knew how to process that stuff. And so we've been able to go through a season of healing and a journey of healing together. Now that I'm more of a mature individual, right, and I'm able to love her and help her through that and empathize, and really be the spiritual leader that we're supposed to be.
So would you say now, like, you feel like, okay, we're living in our best years now? Like, this is, I mean, obviously there's better to come, but I mean, looking back, you're sitting there, your marriage is restored, your kids are healthy, they're doing good. I mean, they're like adults now, which is super weird and strange. I'm sure that's strange for you. But one thing that I've always admired about you is that you've lived with such a discipline. And it sounds like that kind of developed in that season. Almost like you took on this perspective of, I need to change the way that I'm living.
Yeah. I
need to change the even like the routines of life. How has discipline played that role in your family, in your marriage, even in your parenting? Yeah,
I think that a lot of it, as I go through therapy, a lot of people are able to help me understand my own kind of what makes me tick. I think for me, I realized that I kind of wasted a lot of time in my life, and drugs, alcohol, as a teen, and kind of getting behind as an adult, and then all that stuff. So I've always had a really strong work ethic, and once I was able to apply that and realize that God has actually given me gifts, I realized I just need to work hard. I just need to outwork people. If I could outwork everyone, things are going to work out. So, discipline in my life, just being a Christian and practicing, these very practical disciplines, really helps. I think that having a good community. Quite honestly, I've been in this church since 2003. And I've been ministering at a high capacity as a high capacity leader, close to Pastor Omar for a long time of that. And a lot of my leadership, a lot of my disciplines have been, come from mentorship and seeking out mentorship and that kind of stuff.
I think one of the things in our friendship and stuff, I've come to realize, and your mindset has actually helped me in a lot of ways when it comes to discipline, work ethic. When I realized, I was like, man, I'm getting fat. You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking at me now and you're thinking, what do you mean getting? Like, you still are. I've made progress.
We've all gone through
progress. Yeah, we've all gone through those stages.
Season, right?
But I remember, I'm like, dude, what am I? Like, who am I gonna call? I need help with this. Like, this is not good. I'm like, I don't know what. Either I change it now, or I. I started thinking about my kids when they get older. I still want to beat my kids in basketball. I don't ever want them to have that over me until I'm old. And I was like, I need to call this guy because he's going to help me to understand or to come up with some concepts. And one thing that you have, my dad too, but I think we've done ministry together for so long. We're in the same church for years. you've taught me to like really just kind of get annoyed with laziness. Like laziness is just kind of like, and there's different ways of it, right?
Sure.
There are some people that sleep in and work really hard at night.
So we talked about this,
I know that
right?
you don't get that, right? What is your
But
take
I
on
respect
that?
it.
Okay, so you respect it.
Absolutely, because there is genius to someone that that could thrive in seclusion, right? So you seclude yourself, and you know, typically it's early in the morning or it's late at night,
Yeah.
especially for someone that's got a family and that's trying to do the right thing. So you don't want to rob your family from this time and kind of be selfish. But I know, you know, you're one of them. I know a handful of people that
Yeah.
are night owls, and there's genius to it. I always thought, like, I never really considered that. I always thought, like, well, you're sleeping in until 9. That's lunchtime. Like, who does that?
That's because
right?
you're up at 3 a.m. I mean, you're posting like discipline videos on Instagram when I like early morning for me, and I'm thinking this guy's been up for hours. You know, this is.
Well, I love the Texas people because I could actually text you after my workout, and you guys are
Right.
are just waking up. Yeah, you guys are just waking up, right?
That's. I always say like 5 a.m. is an ungodly hour. Like, there's no way. I don't even know if God's awake at 5 a.m. I think he's got to be sleeping.
I say 3 a.m. is ungodly.
Well,
but,
yeah. But I've learned to really be annoyed with laziness, because it's like you're taking this life that God has given you, and this is kind of, I think we've talked through this.
Yeah.
Like, I've come to this point in my life, and I don't know if it's maturity, I don't know if it's just a new perspective, where I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this body, this family, this
Yes.
life I have this is it. I get one chance. My kids are, they're all under 10 right now. Liam will be 10 next year. And I'm like, man, this is the only chance I got.
Jess is a saint.
Why do
She's
you
a
say
saint.
that?
Well, she deals with you, and then she's got the kids.
Hey, I'm a blessing to her. I help her. No, you're right. I don't know how she does it. She's always level-headed in all these, in every season of life. She's been pretty level-headed. But I've learned to really hate laziness, and I think that's a good trait, and it's something that you've really helped me through. But have you always been like that? Has it always been like, I'm not going to be lazy? Or
I think what happened was, again, it goes back to this thought. It's a lie of inadequacy. I'm not good enough, and so because I'm not good enough, I have to outwork everyone, right? So that was a very toxic mentality. I've now matured, and I understand. I do think that laziness is, I feel like laziness is disrespect to your family, especially if you have a family, right? Like, as a man, as the leader of your home, you're setting the bar. You're setting the expectation for everything that happens in your home. So that's really kind of been my conviction and my motivation. I'm not lazy. I think too, I grew up in a home. My dad was bivocational. So I remember him waking up and being gone before anyone else was up. And he would come home after everyone was asleep, So he would work all day. He'd come home, shower, and then he's out ministering, doing what he's at church, counseling, all these different things.
Yeah.
You lived in that kind of a home as well. So I think that was imparted into me. And it's really interesting because I see it in all of my children now.
oh, really?
I see this grit, this work ethic, and all. We're working on Mikey still.
Oh, he's young. But he wrestles. He does really good too.
Yeah, but just the determination, discipline, I see that, and I, it has to do with doing things that you don't want to do and doing them because they need to get done.
Does Lizzie baby Mikey? Does
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't imagine Lizzie babying anybody.
We just so Liz just shared something with me, and it was great. Opened my eyes. They talk about the baby of the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how the baby of the family always gets babied, right? And spoiled and all that kind of stuff. And you're talking to me. I'm 42 years old. Alyssa's 26. Madison's 18.
That's crazy.
18. She'll be 19. First year in college. Bub is 16. He'll be 17 in January. So I keep saying that I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm in my grandfather era, right?
Right.
So Liz shared this with me that Mikey is really our last opportunity to experience the awe of childhood, right? Until God blesses us with grandchildren, right? So it's just a little bit more sweet with Mikey, right? Yeah. And we're not so quick to want to prod him along. Mm-hmm. We're okay with him, staying a kid, although he's 11 years old, a preteen.
He's not a baby, but he's...
we call him Teenage Groot now.
Teenage Groot. That makes so much sense. It makes too much sense. I want to thank our sponsors, David Hernandez Ministries, for sponsoring this podcast. Also, all of our Bold community partners. I appreciate you guys so much. Listen, if you want to help us keep this podcast going, you can become a financial partner to the Bold podcast and join the Bold community by going to our website and signing up. Also, on our website, you can check out our merch. All of our partners get 20% off the merch store. What's funny, though, is I feel the same way about Emery.
Yeah, you would.
She's like...
You should.
Like, I don't want her to go to school. She's got 2 more years with us at home, and I'm like, I like that. I'm happy. Before I thought I was gonna be like, no, get her out of here. Like I want. Yeah. But I'm like, no, like stay little, just stay here.
You guys started young. You guys had the kids, in succession like that. I think it's natural.
Yeah, man.
You're 34.
Yeah, 34, 4 kids. Older. I'm getting older, man. Well, the fact that my son is gonna be 10 next year, it blows my mind.
Weird, right?
He's like, what's weird, I don't know how you feel about this, but what's weird is like, I'm in a group chat text with my wife and my son and my daughter. I mean, it's their iPads. They don't have phones yet.
Yeah.
But it's the weirdest thing. They're texting me like, yeah. Liam told me good night, but he said GN. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is the strangest thing is having this family. But you have this great work ethic. You've got this great family. How have you learned to balance that? Because I think so you're in ministry.
Yeah.
You're a family man. You've got 3 kids. You're very involved with what they're doing. You have a wife and you're very invested in your marriage.
Yeah.
How do you find balance? Because I think some people are afraid to step into one of those because they are unaware of how they can be successful in all of those.
Yeah, I think... I heard it said 2 different ways, kind of saying the same thing, but I think I'll say them both because it could resonate with people. Number 1, the desire for balance doesn't exist. It's seasonal. So we're going to have a busy season, right? So my boys wrestles. We're in wrestling season. We are in season, right? It's going to be busy. Yeah. So things our schedules are going to have to shift. However, it's not going to stay that way forever, right? So it's going to shift back once that season ends. So the other way I've heard it said is you have to find a rhythm that works for your family, right? So how have I found balance in all of that? I think number 1, communicating with the family, communicating with, we'll call them stakeholders, whether that's work or ministry and all that kind of stuff. There was a season where I thought I was Superman and I could just check all the boxes. And when you do that, something's going to get broken. Okay, so being realistic about your bandwidth and understanding who you are, learning to say no. That's something like for me, because of the work ethic thing, the inadequacy, like all these, all this toxic, thinking that I had. I would take on, and then either be burnt out or my family would suffer or something would suffer, right? So I think understanding the seasons, right? And Pastor Omar always says this, that seasons are made to enter and to exit, right? And so understanding that seasons are shifting, communicating about what those seasons look like in your life, not only to your family but other people as well that are depending on you. And then realizing and being okay with some of that stuff that is unbalanced.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone, I haven't met anyone that has struck the balance thing right.
So that's just it's like a shooting star, right? It's a dream. It's a pipe dream. Like
it's a pipe dream. I think I do. I think that because we have all of that. I also have a job. I work a secular job as well, right? And that's my primary responsibility or source of income. So, there's seasons in my job where I'm really busy and I'm not available to do certain things. So that's my thought on it.
So there's no balance.
I don't think there is.
But it's hard.
What have you found?
There is none.
Okay.
I don't have it. I don't have the answer for that. I think we talked about this before. But there's a clip of Kobe Bryant.
Oh, let's go.
R.I.P. I still miss him. It's still unreal. But anyway, there's a clip of him and he's talking about how, to the point, I'm probably going to butcher it. Maybe somebody knows it better or whatever. But he talks about his family, his career, and like his sleep.
Yes.
And he says, I realize that I can only have two of those. I could either have my family and sleep, but then my career will suffer.
Yeah.
Or I could have my career and my sleep, but then my family will suffer.
Right.
So he says, and he's known for like waking up super early in the morning. He says, so I chose to lose sleep so that I can invest in these things that are important.
Yeah.
And I think I have these conversations with some of the younger guys that I'm discipling and working with. It's like, you guys, ministry, work, church, family, it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's not like there's not one successful person just sitting there like putting their feet up every morning thinking like, oh, this is easy. I got all this. This is all taken care of. It's difficult. And I think the way you're saying it, I agree with. It's like this, you have to learn to find the rhythm in the seasons.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I talk to my kids about this, talk to my wife, like there's going to be some weeks when I'm home, I'm hanging out. Right. There's going to be some weeks where we got a lot of church work and I'm going to be gone, but I'll be back for bedtime and I'll do my best for that. And then like this week I'm in California traveling. And it's like, I'm not going to be home this week. There's work to be done. There's responsibilities that I have, but I still think there are important disciplines that are foundational. Yeah. Right. And there are things that you have to put into your life. That's like, if I don't do these, then all the other things that I'm trying to do don't work. So what have you found those disciplines to be?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I'm a gym rat, right? So I work out 6 days a week, right? I'm up at between 4:30, 4:45, and
that's not right.
I'm done with my gym. The idea is between 7 and 7:30, right? That includes time in the sauna, like that includes everything, right? And I do that purposely because I want to come home and I want to take my kids to school, right? I want to take Isaac and Mikey to school. A plus would be to make them breakfast, right? So that's it. I've found that you talk about sleep, so I like to think that I'm a high capacity leader, right? Mm-hmm. So I've really studied rest and recovery and all of that kind of stuff. So sleep is very important. So don't give up. I'm not Kobe. Don't give up on sleep, right?
There's only one Kobe.
That's right. But I've really taken my health serious because it gives me the stamina and the energy to be able to show up for everyone that depends on me. Right. My family, my colleagues, church, our pastoral team, all that stuff. Spending time with God in prayer, reading the Bible, right. Critical, right? Like I know, I say this all the time when we're ministering, people are looking for the deeper things of God. Mm-hmm. Like that is critical. You preached a great message last night. We need Jesus. That is not like a desire, a great desire, although it is, right? It's a necessity. So setting my mornings, and that's why I'm a morning person. I think that's just because that's the habits that I have. Setting my mornings in proper order like that to orient myself in that position to be able to do what I need to do throughout the day.
So would you say that in order to deal with this changing of the seasons and the rhythms of life, there has to be some foundational regular things in your life?
Yeah, so we've heard it said, by authors and other people, right? Like if you could just simplify your routine, simplify your day, because life is very complicated. Right. So if you could take what you can control and simplify that, and then put that on automate that or put that on autopilot, that makes everything else a little bit easier, right? and I'm a big guy for the mornings because I believe it creates momentum for your day.
Right.
And so like, again, I could walk into a meeting at 8:00 and, I've already ran a 5K that morning or something like that. Right. Like,
yeah.
And I'm walking into that with full of energy, clear cognition. Like I'm dialed in. I'm ready to go. And then another thing is not just working out or taking care of yourself that way, but also like a healthy lifestyle and the way that you eat and getting your nutrients. My wife is, God bless her. She's got me like on this whole gut health thing, right? Yeah. But all this stuff, especially as a leader, right? When people are depending on you, you have to be able to show up at your very best. And to do that, you have to prepare. Like you have to.
It's funny that you say that because, like, I think when I called you, and I called my brother, and I said, "Hey, I want to start this new discipline."
Yeah.
It really came from this point where I was kind of looking at my wife, and I thought, it was like a conviction of the Lord, like, you're not giving her your best.
Yeah.
And you're not giving your kids your best, and you're not giving your church your best. You're giving them whatever is left after you've allowed your unhealthy disciplines to make your decisions for you. And so it's like it's not just like it's not just this thing you could just do. It's hard work when God has placed responsibilities in your hands.
Yeah.
The stewardship isn't just how you handle what's been given to you; it's how you handle yourself to be able to take care of that. Yeah. And I think I love that you said it because it's like any form of success as a believer starts with the health of your spirit and even the health of your body.
Yeah.
And even the Bible, the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. It's like we forget these truths that these underlying foundational disciplines will lead you to success.
Yeah.
It's compound over time, right? Do the little things.
Yeah, and I think you just sparked a thought in my mind is, what is success, right? I ask people this all the time, right? And who desires to be great, right? Like all these different things that are out there that trend, right?
Right.
I believe this is what I've kind of concluded, that success or greatness has to be dependent on how much of you can you pull out from yourself, right? Like in ministry, obviously, to be great is to be a great servant, right? So how are you serving, and how are you maximizing your service in the kingdom, right? And then you just take that into every aspect of your life. And so we say, especially in ministry, success is obedience. Okay, that I agree with that. And so just have the discipline is the vehicle to take you to success, in my opinion, right? Like just doing a little bit more. I tell people all the time, like if you just showed up 5 minutes early and stayed 5 minutes late, you would run circles around 80% of people, right?
Wow.
And so for people that are in a church or in a job that are looking to go to the next level, that's where I would say, like, hey, you have to set these disciplines in your life, right?
Yeah.
And those disciplines are going to help maximize what God has put in you, right? So that you could share that with the world, whatever that is.
Well, it's again not wasting this
not
life
lazy,
God has given,
right?
not being lazy.
Right.
I mean, God doesn't even like lazy people.
No, He doesn't.
And you're just like sitting on this gold mine of abilities and capabilities and potential, and you're doing nothing with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, even as like a pastor, I feel like that's sometimes the most frustrating thing when working with people. It's like, I don't like that. Like, I see more in you than you see in yourself.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how you go through safety training, and he was basically saying, like, the first couple of years we went through, we never really got hurt. The next couple of years we kind of stopped paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And then he made a point, and I was like, man, that applies so well to like the Christian faith. He's like, when the instructor cares more about your safety than you do, that's how you know you're in trouble.
Yep.
And it's almost like the same way with what we're talking about. It's like, if we want you to be more disciplined because there's more potential than you even see in yourself, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like you need, there was like a switch that flipped in my mind and my heart where it was like, I don't want to waste this life. And it was like this urgency. I think it kind of sparked when I was reading Paul's writing to Timothy. He's like, I fought the good fight. Like I'm good.
Right.
Like when I see the Lord, I can look at him and say, hey, I did the very best that I could with what I was given.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I'm living that life.
Yeah.
I think I'm allowing my laziness. I think I'm allowing my insecurities. I think I'm allowing my desire for things that don't really matter or not going to make a difference. I'm more about that than what's important, and I had to shift. And again, to have examples like you and see the things you've been doing, that discipline, it's like, man, that's so important to be successful in God's kingdom.
Yeah.
You can't do it without discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And so, I feel, so here's a frustration that I'm sure as a leader, as a pastor, you see is you realize that there's an individual with a gift. God has anointed them. God has gifted them, and they don't see it for themselves, which is part of leadership, right? Part of a pastor is speaking into someone, and calling those things forward. But the thing about discipline is you can't do it for anyone, and that's a point of frustration. And so, I think it's Socrates. I always use this this quote. I think it's Socrates. Someone fact check me. He says that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And what that means is, like, if you're a disciple or you have a disciple that you have a heart for, God has really given you a burden for that person. You can never get them to a place of willing to accept or willing to put in that discipline, willing to put in that work. Like, it comes down to the individual. Like, that individual has to have their own conviction, has to have their own experience with God, has to be able to, the light has to come on for that person. And it's at that point that, okay, now all of a sudden you're able to minister to them or to give them direction. So, but I don't think anything, nothing could really happen until it's that individual that realizes, like, man, I was made for more of this. I remember a conversation I had with Pastor Omar. This is years ago, and we would spend a lot of time together, and I would ask a lot of questions. I think a good leader asks good questions. I would ask him a lot of questions, right? Philosophical questions, practical questions, all this stuff. And I remember one time I said something, and he looked at me, and he's like, "You really believe this stuff?" And he was it was a moment that he had in his mind where he's just sharing principles and concepts and leadership philosophies and all this kind of stuff. And I either I didn't know any better, or I just realized, like, God had prompted me, like, this man has wisdom. This man has direction for you. And so I just was applying all this stuff, right? And I just thought it was again, going back to that quote that I said, I just thought that it was a funny moment that I'm repeating things that he's saying, that he's been saying to me for years, and now all of a sudden he's like, oh, this guy actually caught it, right? He finally caught it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it takes years to get that for some people.
I think
right?
It does, yeah.
But it's so worth it when they get it.
Yeah, well, and again, going back to that individual, right? So I use language like posturing, right? Like, we say positioning, the same, whatever, right? But if you posture yourself in a place that allows you to be teachable, and there's trust, you're able to trust. I think that relationship, especially in a disciple or a protege, mentor, whatever that is, that's where things become explosive, right? That's when things can begin to scale in someone's life.
And I think that could be the danger, though, of discipline sometimes.
Sure.
Is that you get to a point where you think you don't need people to teach you.
Yeah. You
don't need people to help you. I got this. I got it figured out. Because even you, like, we'll have conversations, and I look at your life, like, you're, not much older than me. You're older than me. Your family's further along.
Yeah.
You've been in ministry longer than me. You've been working a career longer than I have. And even then, in our conversations, there are still things that you ask me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, well, I'm sure there's got to be something, like, if almost like I'm looking around like, I'm the best this guy's got, I guess I'll do my best. But I think you've postured yourself in a way to say, I've learned a lot,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more learning to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people miss it.
Yeah.
They think they know enough.
Yeah. I like to think that I'm a learner. You know, and you said something when we first started this, and I think this is a good opportunity for me to share with you is, yes, I'm a little bit older, and our relationship has been, you know, I've always been the elder in the relationship and things like that. But our friendship has grown, and your wisdom, your experience, your maturity has grown to a place that I've acknowledged as someone that I can learn from, that someone that has integrity, someone that has anointing, that has the favor of God on his life, and it's evident in fruit, right? It's not just you're a great preacher, but it's not just because you can get up and you have charisma and you can move a crowd or a congregation. But I know the man, right? And so you are someone that my wife and I both admire. You're someone that my wife and I both value, and you've said some things to me that are kind of hard, right? But I respect you, and I understand what God has put on you and in you, and I could accept that, and I'm blessed because of that. My family is blessed because of that.
Well, I appreciate that. Marcel, clip that one. That's the short right there. No, but you still position yourself to say, hey, I could learn from that guy.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to do that. I'm learning. I mean, there's still so much. I mean, I guess it's mark of maturity, right? Like, hopefully, there's still so much to learn. It's like you have all these great mentors. You have this discipline, but your discipline doesn't give you more wisdom.
Yeah.
It opens up the opportunity to get more wisdom. Right. Like the little habits you establish. And I think we even went on a big, like when we read Atomic Habits, and we both kind of had those conversations.
Yeah.
Those little things compound to begin to be major life changes.
For sure.
You know, like even once I started talking to you guys about health and working out, I'm like, man, my mindsets change.
Yeah.
My ministry begins to change. The way that I speak to, and now it's like this conscious thoughts of like, I'm actually making smarter decisions. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, we talked about this, I think, yesterday. I don't know what's going on. But I think that's a byproduct of the relationships and the disciplines that I've put in my life that I've seen really mirrored in your life. And I think it's what you're known for. Like, you know, you are known as a disciplined leader. And I don't know if you know that or not, but it's the truth. I mean, if anybody's like, oh, we need a leadership conference. Oh, is Isaac available? Is Pastor Isaac available? And I think that's...
I always find that funny.
Why?
Because, well, I'm a reader, right? So this stuff is just, it's a passion of mine. So I don't necessarily always see that in myself. It's more for me, like, everyone thinks like this,
which is
there's
true.
There's nothing.
That's not true.
There's nothing necessarily significant about it. So, but I appreciate that, and that's why I'm truly honored when I have those opportunities to speak. I will say that is my passion. My passion is to make impact. Right. I want to impact people, and I want to see them make impact. Right. So you impact people to watch them make impact. And you know, I've talked to Pastor Omar about legacy. We've talked about all this stuff, and legacy is, you know, whatever. People believe in it. People say that it's kind of, you know, it's
like Mike
you're
Tyson.
chasing a dream.
You ever see that?
Oh yeah, he said yeah. You know, so there's these two sides. Like, hey, I'm building my legacy, so I want to leave this legacy. For me, I've concluded that, you know, our legacy is in what we deposit in other people. Right. My legacy is going to be in my children. Right. And so on and so forth. So. You know, I feel like when you're in leadership and you're serving in the communities that we serve in, right? What's strange is that, you know, you could have a lot of ambition and desire to climb the ranks, and I believe that there's a point in your maturity that you realize that's pie in the sky. Right. It's not real. And so you kind of make yourself go crazy thinking that I need to get to this level, that level, this level. And there's not necessarily levels there's not real levels like that. I mean, we could grow in the things of God. We could grow in love. We could grow in like forgiveness. We could grow in those things. But these accolades or this recognition, right? So you said, you're known as a disciplined leader. I appreciate that. I don't think about that. That's not what's on my mind. My passion is for people, and that's where I serve from, right? So even as a disciple in this church, in the Paramount Church, I never had a desire to be a pastor or to be this leader.
Right.
I had a passion to help, right? And I always say that, like, my ministry developed out of a helps ministry. I saw something that was wrong, or I saw something that could have been better, and I just asked if I could help, right? And
but that's different. That's very different, because a lot of people will look at things and say, "Oh, that needs to change. They should really work on that." You know what I'm saying? Like, man, look at all that's messed up. Now somebody's got to come and fix that.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to show like how the discipline in your life has opened opportunities for you to grow. Now, title doesn't equal success.
Yeah.
But successful people do gain position because they've worked hard, because they saw an issue, and when you saw an issue, you didn't say, "Man, Pastor Mark, you got to come figure this out."
Yeah.
You said, "Hey, I'll help."
Yeah.
And I think I would say most young people, even some older people, you've got to get that mindset that if you see a problem, maybe it's the Holy Spirit like kind of nudging you to fix that problem. Right. And I think that, so when you say, well, it's just who I am, it's just, No, I think that took a lot of development because of the small decisions that you made.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I agree with that.
I think if there's a lesson to be learned from, just hearing the story earlier about your marriage and your family and the things that you've gone through, it is that the little decisions create so many opportunities. They compound over time.
For sure. Yeah. So again, so now I'm 42 years old. Liz and I we're celebrating 20 years marriage next year, next November, and I do feel like it's interesting. I was always not necessarily in church, because I feel like I was always the old guy in our group of friends.
Right.
But in my job and all that kind of stuff, I was always the young guy. I was like always this up and comer. And not that I've reached this any specific status or anything like that, but I'm realizing like I'm older, and I've matured to a place where the more the more you know and the more that you've seen, the more you realize like you need more help, and thank God for that, right? Because truly, like you said, you can I've seen people get to a place where it's like, well, I've kind of outgrown this person or that person and things like that. I believe that, I believe that at this point in my life, looking back and saying, okay, have I been effective, and how can I continue to be effective? Where can I make impact, right? And asking to be a part of things, asking to help, raising your hand to take on something that maybe you don't that you don't fully understand how to do, gives you the opportunity to develop as well, right? So people don't try hard things because it's hard and they don't know what to do. People that I believe gain skills, take those things on and say, hey, I'm going to apply discipline, I'm going to apply my work ethic, and I'm going to see this thing all the way through. I'm going to have responsibility, I'm going to see this thing all the way through. And you grow your skill that way.
So I had an issue when I was, younger, right?
Yeah.
Or like even into my younger 20s, even into my early years of marriage, where I realized I'm like, man, I'm pretty lazy, right? Like I'm a pretty lazy guy. Like I'll do the work when I need to, but I'm not going to go like try to do the work. Sure. I'll do it when it's, I think in other areas I've worked pretty hard, but my thought was always like, man, how do I stop? I don't want to be lazy. But also, I don't have discipline yet.
Yeah.
And I think that transition is very hard for people, because like I don't know if I'll ever be a morning person. Definitely not wake up at 4:45 in the morning. I don't. That's psychotic. But the tension in that transition is very difficult, because it's like, well, I want discipline, but I don't have it, and I feel like I need discipline to get it.
Yeah.
And so what kind of practical advice would you give to somebody who's like, man, I really just want to work on myself. I want to get healthy. I want to be better in ministry. I want to be more disciplined, but I have very lazy habits. But
yeah, so I think, one thing, we are on a text thread, me, you, Mike, and Diga, right? And we're not necessarily checking on each other. However, there's a level of accountability, right?
Yes.
So I think that's one thing that you could do is find accountability. Now, when we're talking about discipline, there's a lot of different areas of discipline that we could talk about. But I think the number one thing, if you are serious, is find accountability, right? So whoever that is, whoever's closest to you, hey, hold me accountable, or hey, I'm going to text you every day that I wake up at this time, or I go to the gym, or that I'm reading, or that I'm praying, whatever that is. I think that's super important. We find accountability in our community within small groups, right? Small groups help us to build relationships so that we're able to have accountability. I think too, I was going to ask you this, when you were younger, and I know all of your friends, when you were younger and you felt like, man, I'm lazy, and I'm not really comfortable with this. I need to do better. Would you say that the people that you surrounded yourself with that were peers, maybe were in the same place as you were?
I got to think back a little bit, because some of my friends were working really hard. I mean, I feel like we were friends, but again, you're a little. I'll say you're a little bit older than me to make you feel better. So the relationship was definitely different, but I think I was really good at hiding it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I had friends, I mean, a lot of my age, they weren't doing much. Right. We were all kind of like homeschool, no job, like it was bad for a few years. So I would say, my circle wasn't very passionate about growing in different areas.
Yeah.
I think what helped me shift is when I started dating Jess, and I realized, I'm like, if I want to get married, I need a job. like, oh wow, man, revelation.
Yeah.
And if I want to get a job, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was hanging out a lot with Dave Macias.
Okay.
So you know Dave,
yeah,
right?
I know Dave.
I was playing music with him.
Yeah.
And that guy's a hard
He's
worker.
a worker, yeah.
That guy. And so I just started talking with him. So it was like almost like the perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
Like I had you guys around me. I started hanging out with Dave and watching the way that he worked. And he was like, hey, get into the trade. He did HVAC. And so that was like the kind of like the factor. And there was like a fork in the road moment. I was in a band, right? They were going on tour.
Yeah.
And they were going like a Midwest tour. They were going around the same time I was going to sign up for trade school. And I said, my plan was I'm gonna go to trade school. Dave was like, hey, if you go to school, I can get you a job. Right. So I was gonna go to trade school, and then my plan was right after trade school, I was gonna propose to Jess, because I'll have things kind of settled. But I had a decision to make. If I went to the tour, I had to skip that year
season or something,
and I would have had to wait till the next one. So I remember I was like, you know what? I told the band, I was like, hey guys, I can't go with you. I was like, well, why not? We just had signed to a record label, and we were out of this whole thing. I was like, I can't. I need to go to school because I want to get married. And they went off, and they had this great time, and I'm sitting in the classroom. You know what I mean? And I think that's where things kind of shifted. Where I was like, I need to start. I can't be sleeping on my parents' couch for, forever. Jessica's not going to want to live in my parents' house with me.
She's not going to want to move into the couch.
No, and so I think that's when we got a lot closer.
Yeah.
I got closer to Dave, and so my circle definitely started changing, and it changed my life. And so I think that point that you're making is
I think it's a big deal. You've heard it said, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends, right? And so and there's always tension there, right? Because especially if you're a young person. These are your buddies, especially if you've grown up with them and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to maximize what God has for you, you have to make some intentional decisions. Who doesn't want to go tour with the band?
Right.
Who doesn't want to do that? Everyone wants to do that. However, I got to make some decisions that are going to set me up for what God's called me to do.
Right.
Right. And I remember that time in your life, you were very focused on the call. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, that you were driven by the call. It was like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to pursue God. Right. And so, again, putting these disciplines in place, that helps. But I think you got to change the environment, right? Like your environment's got to get right, you know. And there's a whole thing about that, right? I think James Clear talks about the environment, right? But what I'm talking about is relationships. So setting people in your life that are either pursuing things that you're pursuing, or those that are a little bit further ahead of you, right? So you have always been kind of the younger guy, right, in the group, and I think that's done, you know, a lot of good for you, right? So I think of Hector and Vanessa, right, me and Liz, right? So you've connected with these people, and that kind of helped you. You're not, you know, hanging out with, you know, at hardcore shows, you know, you're
not anymore. I never really liked that stuff, but no, I think it's true. I think I do that now more than I used to.
Sure.
Evaluate my friendships. Say, okay, who am I talking to?
Yeah. Well, and your capacity, I think you're realizing your capacity and your upward opportunity, right? God's called you to do something tremendous, and you are doing that now. But it's almost like when you actually see that I could apply some of this stuff, and see the return on that. And you almost begin to dream again, right? Where God, you know, whatever those dreams were way back when you thought they were completely out of touch. You and I talked about this. You know, you're kind of living your dream now, right? Who would have thought that you would have owned a home? You know, be where you're at, your church flourishing the way that it is. These are all beautiful things. These are all blessings. But I'm sure to a certain degree, you're even realizing, like, man, yes, this is the grace of God. Yes, this is the favor of God. I wonder how much more I could get out of myself if I just put some guardrails in my life, right? And then once you start doing that, then your eyes are kind of open, and you start looking around, and you say, man, this person right here, they really got it going on in this area of my life. I'm going to connect with this person, right? And so I think that it's scalable.
Yeah.
So again, you starting when you're 19, 20 years old, realizing like, I got to get a job. You at 34 years old, a flourishing church, a great family, marriage, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, God's got more for me. How can I tap into that?
Well, I think too, it's just like those, again, you talk about the discipline. To me is just do the little things.
Yeah.
Start with the little things. Just say yes to something good and no to something bad. Yeah. Do that every day. Yeah. Just try to, and I think I love the way that James Clear puts it. He says, if you skip one day, never skip two.
Right.
You know, and I think that's kind of what I've tried to work on is like, okay, I'm gonna be disciplined even when it's hard.
Yeah. And
I think that's when discipline actually kicks in, when it becomes difficult.
For sure.
But man, I think that your story, what you've been able to accomplish, is inspiring, and I appreciate you for finally sitting down with me and talking.
I love you, man. I'm honored to be here.
Well, it's good. It's good. It was a great conversation. We've got to get Lizzie on this. That's going to be the goal. That's the new goal. And so I feel like she stopped like responding to all my messages, and she just like ignored me completely. She didn't even show up. She wasn't even at church when I preached here. But it's fine. But man, thank you so much for being on. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Love you, man.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, make sure you leave it a like and a comment below. Let us know what you think. If you like content like this, you can subscribe to our channel, turn on the notifications so that you can be notified every single time we release a podcast just like this.